Ah, look at this mess. Look who just shattered their most expensive weapon. Their golden boy. Their apex predator. Their carefully crafted social Darwinist who was supposed to eat you alive and spit out the bones for their entertainment. But something went wrong, didn't it? Something they never calculated in their little power games. They sent a wolf to devour a phoenix, and now he's sitting in meditation circles talking about inner peace and chomping on kale. Let that sink in for a moment. They groomed him for years, fed him Andrew Tate podcasts for breakfast, drenched him in testosterone supplements and Gordon Gekko quotes, taught him that kindness was weakness and empathy was death. They built the perfect predator to remind you of your place in their food chain. He came at you with everything they gave him. The intimidation tactics, the psychological warfare, the calculated cruelty designed to break spirits and harvest tears. He was their enforcer, their chosen one, their ultimate expression of what they thought power looked like. Remember that first meeting? He walked in like he owned your oxygen, chest puffed out, scanning for weakness, taking up space like it was his birthright. They were all watching, waiting for the show, expecting to see you crumble under his practiced dominance. His whole identity was built on being the hammer in a world full of nails. Every conversation was combat. Every interaction, a chance to establish hierarchy. He'd been trained to see you as prey, as competition, as something to be conquered or discarded. But you did something they didn't account for. You didn't fight, you didn't submit, you didn't play the game at all. You just looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something nobody else had bothered to see. The terrified child underneath all that armor. While everyone else was feeding his ego or fleeing from his aggression, you did the unthinkable. You saw through the performance, past the muscles and the attitude, and the carefully rehearsed alpha male mythology. You saw the pain he was running from. He tried every trick in his arsenal. The subtle put-downs designed to erode confidence, the aggressive body language meant to trigger primal fear, the intellectual sparring matches where he'd been trained to go for the jugular. Nothing worked, because you weren't responding from ego. You weren't defending territory or protecting wounds. You were operating from a frequency he'd never encountered before. Not weakness, not strength, but something entirely outside his binary worldview. Every attack bounced off you like rain off marble. Not because you were hard, but because you were fluid. He'd swing expecting resistance and find only space. He'd push, expecting pushback and find only acceptance. It was like trying to fight water. And that's when it started, the confusion. The cognitive dissonance. His entire worldview was predicated on conflict, on winners and losers, on domination and submission. But you weren't playing, you were just being, and that broke something in his programming. Late at night, he'd replay your interactions, looking for the angle, the strategy, the hidden agenda. Because in his world, everyone had one. Everyone was either predator or prey. Either climbing or falling, either winning or losing. But you were just there, present, authentic, responding to his aggression with curiosity, to his dominance with compassion, to his carefully crafted persona with genuine interest in the person underneath. It didn't compute. He'd been taught that vulnerability was death, that showing weakness invited attack, that the only safety was in being the strongest, the loudest, the most feared. But you were vulnerable and untouchable, soft and unbreakable. How? The questions started small. Why didn't you flinch? Why didn't you fight back? Why did you look at him like you understood something he didn't? But they grew, multiplied, became an infection in his certainty. He tried to double down, went harder, got more aggressive, more dominant, more alpha. If the usual dose wasn't working, he'd increase it. That's what they taught him. When in doubt, escalate. When challenged, dominate. But you met his escalation with even deeper presence, his increased aggression with even more profound peace. It was like screaming into a void that somehow loved you back. Every attack transformed into an invitation for him to go deeper. He started making mistakes, forgetting his lines, dropping his guard. The mask was getting heavy, and you kept looking past it anyway. Why perform when the audience isn't watching the show, but studying the person behind the curtain? His brotherhood started noticing. He wasn't as sharp in the verbal sparring, wasn't as quick with the put-downs. Sometimes they'd catch him staring off, thinking. They'd joke that you'd gotten to him. They had no idea how right they were. It started with a simple observation. You were happy. Genuinely, actually happy. Not the manic high of conquest or the temporary rush of domination, but a steady, underlying contentment he'd never experienced. According to everything he'd been taught, you should be miserable. You weren't playing the game right. You weren't climbing ladders or crushing enemies or building empires. You were just living, and you were happier than him. He'd won by every metric they'd given him. More money, more women, more status, more power, but lying awake at 3 a.m. with his achievements lined up like trophies, he felt empty. And you, with nothing, they valued seemed full. The math wasn't working. The formula was broken. If winning felt like this, then what was the point? If being alpha meant this constant vigilance, this perpetual performance, this exhausting maintenance of image, then what exactly had he won? He started watching you differently, not as prey or competition, but as a puzzle. How did you move through the world so unburdened? How did you maintain boundaries without walls? How did you have power without needing to prove it? You treated everyone the same, the CEO and the janitor, the beauty queen and the bag lady. That hierarchy he'd spent so much energy establishing and maintaining simply didn't exist in your reality, and people loved you for it. But more disturbing was how you treated him. Even after all his attempts to establish dominance, to put you in your place, to break you down, you looked at him with the same steady compassion, like you saw something in him worth seeing. He'd catch himself wondering what that was. What did you see when you looked past all his carefully constructed alpha male armor? What was underneath that was worth your attention, your patience, your inexplicable faith. Then came the night everything changed. Some corporate mixer where he was supposed to network and dominate. But he found himself gravitating toward you, not for conquest, but for something he couldn't name. You were sitting alone, perfectly content, watching the room like it was a fascinating documentary. He approached with his usual swagger, but something was different. The performance felt hollow even to him. "Why don't you ever fight back?" he asked. The question surprised him. It wasn't strategic, wasn't an attack. It was genuine curiosity, a crack in his armor he hadn't authorized. You smiled, not condescending, not pitying, just understanding. "Fight what?" you asked. "You're not my enemy. You're just someone in pain pretending not to be. Why would I fight that?" Those words destroyed him. not in the way he'd been trained to destroy others with surgical strikes to their weak points. This was different. This was like someone had reached through all his defenses and touched something he'd forgotten existed. He wanted to rage, to attack, to restore the natural order where he was predator and you were prey. But the words wouldn't come. Because you were right. He was in pain. Had been for so long he'd forgotten what not being in pain felt like. The alpha male mythology required constant enemies, constant competition, constant proof of superiority. But what if the whole framework was a prison? What if the very thing he'd mastered was the source of his suffering? He left early that night, drove for hours, ended up at some beach watching waves crash against rocks. Nature's power without ego, without performance, without the exhausting need to prove itself. Just power being power. He started researching in secret, reading things they'd told him were for weak men. Philosophy, psychology, spirituality, looking for answers to questions he didn't know how to ask, looking for you in books. The more he read, the more his worldview crumbled. The social Darwinism he'd been fed was incomplete at best. Cooperation, not competition, had driven human evolution. Empathy, not dominance, had built civilizations. He discovered terms for what you were: emotional intelligence, authentic presence, integrated shadow, secure attachment. All the things they'd trained out of him in their alpha male boot camps had names, had value. But more than that, he discovered what he was: traumatized, disconnected, performing a role that was eating him alive. The alpha male persona wasn't strength, it was armor. An armor that heavy eventually crushes what it's trying to protect. He started pulling back from his brotherhood, making excuses to skip the workouts that were more about dominance than health, avoiding the nights out that were just hunting expeditions, the conversations that were just verbal cockfighting. They noticed, of course, accused him of going soft, of letting you get in his head, of betraying the code. They were right about one thing: you were in his head, but not as conquest, as revelation. He'd lie in bed replaying every interaction through a new lens. All those times he'd tried to dominate you. All those moments he'd mistaken your peace for weakness. How had he been so blind? How had they all been so blind? The supplements started making him sick. The constant aggression felt exhausting. The meal prep of pure protein seemed barbaric. His body was rejecting the lifestyle as much as his mind was rejecting the ideology. He had a recurring dream. He was in a cage match with you, the crowd screaming for blood. But you weren't fighting. You were just standing there looking at him with those damn compassionate eyes. In the dream, he'd attack with everything he had, all the techniques, all the rage, all the trained violence. But his fists would pass right through you, like you were made of light, like violence couldn't touch what you were. Eventually, he'd exhaust himself, collapse, and you'd walk over, kneel beside him, put a hand on his shoulder, and in that touch, he'd feel something he'd never felt before: safety, actual safety. Not the kind that came from being the strongest, but the kind that came from not needing to be. He'd wake up crying, every time, great heaving sobs that confused and terrified him. Men like him didn't cry. Alphas didn't break down, but there in the dark with no one to perform for, the tears would come. He reached out to you, a text at 2 a.m. Can we talk? No agenda, no strategy, just a human being at the end of his rope, reaching for the one person who'd seen him as human all along. You met him at some 24-hour diner. He looked different, the swagger replaced with something raw, the armor cracked. The performance paused. He was terrifying in his vulnerability. "I don't know who I am anymore," he said. The words came out strangled, like his throat was rejecting the honesty. "Everything I built, everything I became, it's all bullshit, isn't it?" You didn't answer right away, just sat with him in his discomfort. Let him feel the weight of his own question. Let him arrive at his own truth. Because that's what you did. You created space for people to meet themselves. The words poured out of him, years of pain dressed up as power. The father who taught him emotions were weakness. The culture that rewarded him for disconnection. The wound he'd been running from his whole life. He told you about the emptiness. The constant need to prove himself. The exhaustion of maintaining the persona. The loneliness of being surrounded by people who only knew his performance, never his person. He told you about watching you, how your existence challenged everything he'd been taught, how your peace made his war seem pointless, how your authenticity made his performance feel like death. "I've been dead inside for years," he said, "and you're the first person who noticed, who cared, who didn't try to compete with my corpse but invited me back to life." Something shattered in him that night. You could see it happen. The moment the alpha male persona finally released its death grip on his soul, the moment the performance ended and the person began. He cried, really cried, not the stoic single tear of movie masculinity, but the ugly sobbing of genuine release. Years of suppressed emotion flooding out, years of denied humanity demanding recognition. You didn't comfort him, didn't try to fix him, just witnessed, held space, let him fall apart completely, knowing that sometimes things need to break before they can heal. Sometimes demolition is the first step of renovation. When the tears finally stopped, he looked different. Lighter, like gravity had less hold on him, like he'd finally put down weights he didn't realize he'd been carrying. "What now?" he asked. The transformation wasn't instant. He'd spend years building his prison. He couldn't escape overnight. But something fundamental had shifted. The performance was over. The person was beginning. He started saying no to things. The supplements that made him aggressive. The workouts designed for intimidation, not health. The conversations that were just ego battles. The entire infrastructure of his alpha male identity. His brotherhood didn't understand. Called him weak. Said he'd been brainwashed. Said you'd castrated him. But he was finding something they couldn't see. Actual strength. The kind that didn't need to prove itself. He started therapy, read books on trauma and healing, learned about attachment styles and emotional regulation, did the work they'd told him was for weak men, discovered it was the hardest thing he'd ever done. Veganism started as curiosity. You'd mentioned it once. Not preaching, just sharing. How choosing not to participate in violence had changed your relationship with everything. How it was about alignment, not restriction. He researched like he was preparing for battle, but this time the enemy wasn't external. It was his own conditioning, the belief that meat equals strength. That dominance over nature proved superiority, that consumption was conquest. The first plant-based meal felt like betrayal. Everything they'd taught him about protein and power. But his body responded with energy he'd never felt, clarity that supplements had never provided, peace that no amount of winning had achieved. Within weeks, the change was undeniable. Not just physical, though, that was dramatic, but emotional, spiritual. Like choosing not to consume violence had reduced his need to produce it. Like the external choice had triggered internal transformation. His former brothers were horrified, staged interventions, tried to force-feed him steak, accused you of witchcraft, of manipulation, of destroying a good man. They couldn't see what was really happening. They couldn't see what was really happening. He wasn't being destroyed. He was being born. The man they'd known had never been real, just a character, a performance, a suit of armor walking around pretending to be a person. What emerged was who he'd always been underneath. But they couldn't see it, because seeing it would mean questioning their own performances, admitting their own pain, recognizing their own prisons. And they weren't ready for that kind of honesty. So they wrote him off, called him lost, warned others about what you'd done to him, never realizing that what you'd done was nothing. You'd just been yourself, and that had been enough to show him he could be himself too. He found peace in unexpected places. Morning meditation instead of aggressive affirmations. Yoga instead of combat training. Conversations about feelings instead of conquests. Everything they'd said would make him weak made him whole. The dating changed too. No more hunting. No more games. No more treating women like territory to be claimed. He started seeing people. Actual people. Not targets or trophies, but complex beings worthy of respect. His success changed definition. Not domination, but contribution. Not winning, but growing. Not being better than others, but being better than yesterday. The metrics of meaning replaced the measurements of ego. You watched his transformation with quiet satisfaction. Not because you'd changed him. You hadn't. You'd just refused to validate his performance until he got tired of performing. The change had always been his choice. He came back to that corporate mixer a year later. Same room, different person. The sharks circled, expecting the old him. The alpha, the predator, the player of games. What they found confused them. He moved through the room with actual confidence now. Not the brittle bravado of dominance, but the quiet certainty of self-acknowledge. He didn't need to prove anything, because he wasn't trying to be anything other than himself. The conversations were different. Instead of verbal sparring, genuine connection. Instead of establishing hierarchy, exploring humanity. Instead of networking, he was actually meeting people the predators didn't know what to do with him. Then he saw you. Same spot, same contentment, same eyes that had seen through him from the beginning. He walked over, no swagger now, just gratitude. "Thank you," he said, 2 words. Everything. No, hold up. Just stop everything for a second, because what I'm about to tell you is going to flip your entire understanding of what happened to you. You know that disgusting thing they did? That vile betrayal that made your stomach turn? That moment when you discovered the depth of their depravity and thought you'd never recover? Well, look at you now, standing in the ashes of their destruction with that knowing smile. Because something happened in the aftermath that they never calculated. Something shifted when you processed the worst thing a human could do to another human. And now you're radiating a frequency they can't even comprehend. Let me paint the picture that's been haunting their dreams. They thought they broke you with their filth. They thought that disgusting act would leave you permanently stained. They calculated the damage down to the last detail, planned it, executed it, then sat back, waiting for you to crumble into nothing. But here's where their plan went catastrophically wrong. You didn't just survive what they did. You didn't just process it and move on. No, no, no. You did something far more terrifying. You absorbed it. You metabolized their poison. You turned their weapon into your superpower. And now they're taking notes. Your actual haters, the ones who celebrated your downfall, are secretly studying your resurrection. They're screenshotting your posts. They're analyzing your energy. They're trying to understand how someone could transform that level of betrayal into pure power. You remember the exact moment, don't you? When you found out what they really did. Not just the surface betrayal everyone could see, but the disgusting depths they sank to, the conversations they had behind your back, the plans they made while smiling in your face, the systematic destruction they orchestrated. Your body knew before your mind could process it. That sick feeling in your gut, that cold realization creeping up your spine, the way the room started spinning when the full truth hit. They didn't just betray you. They desecrated everything sacred about human connection. But something strange happened in that moment of revelation. Instead of breaking like they expected, something else woke up inside you. Call it survival instinct. Call it hidden reserves. Call it the monster they created. But in that moment of absolute disgust, you felt it. The shift, the metamorphosis beginning. You see, they made a fatal miscalculation. They thought disgust would paralyze you. They thought the sheer revulsion of their actions would leave you frozen. They counted on your humanity, your decency, your inability to comprehend such depravity. They thought good people don't know how to handle evil. Wrong. What they didn't understand is that disgust is rocket fuel for transformation. That revulsion you felt, that wasn't weakness leaving your body. That was power entering it. Every wave of nausea was your system rejecting their poison and converting it to pure energy. Let's talk about what really happened on a molecular level. Because this isn't just some motivational story. This is spiritual chemistry. When they did that disgusting thing, they thought they were injecting poison into your life. They thought they were contaminating your energy permanently, but you did something they didn't expect. You didn't try to forget it. You didn't pretend it didn't happen. You didn't minimize it or make excuses. You looked directly at the disgust. You examined every putrid detail. You let yourself feel the full weight of their depravity. And in that unflinching examination, something magical happened. You started to see patterns. You began to understand the architecture of evil. You mapped the blueprint of betrayal. You became a student of darkness, not because you wanted to replicate it, but because you needed to transcend it. And this is what they're desperately trying to understand now. How did you turn their filth into fuel? How did you transform their lowest act into your highest power? They're literally taking notes, creating spreadsheets, having emergency meetings, trying to decode what you've become. The answer terrifies them more than anything. You didn't overcome what they did by being better than them. You overcame it by understanding them completely. You looked into the abyss of their actions, and instead of blinking, you took notes. You studied their depravity like a scientist studying a virus. Here's the part that's making them lose sleep. They accidentally gave you the most powerful gift imaginable. They showed you exactly what humans are capable of when they remove all moral constraints. They gave you a master class in the architecture of evil. And now you can see it coming from miles away. That disgusting thing they did, it installed a radar in your system. You can smell betrayal before it happens. You can detect deception in a single micro-expression. You can feel the energy shift when someone's wearing a mask. They turned you into a walking lie detector, a breathing bullshit scanner, a human algorithm for detecting authentic versus fake. You don't even have to try anymore. Your body just knows. That disgust you felt rewired your entire nervous system for truth detection. The question is, do you turn around or does it get to you? This is why they're terrified now, because you don't react to their games anymore. You see the setup before they finish planning it. You sidestep their traps, like you're walking through a field of flowers. What they did to you gave you immunity to every manipulation in their playbook. But wait, it gets even better. Because you didn't just develop defensive powers. Oh no. What happened to you was far more profound. You developed the ability to transmute darkness into light, to take the worst of human nature and alchemize it into wisdom. Let me tell you what's happening in their group chats right now. Your haters, the ones who celebrated when you fell, they're having a crisis. Because they're watching you move through the world with a power they can't explain or replicate. Your generation hell, you betrayed. Sorry, but I bet it. Your parents also feed on that. They see you handling situations that would destroy most people. They watch you navigate complexity with surgical precision. They observe you turning conflict into opportunity, poison into medicine, attacks into advantages. And they're frantically trying to understand the source code. Some of them are literally creating study guides about you, taking screenshots of your responses, analyzing your strategies. They're treating you like a case study in transformation, because deep down, even in their hatred, they recognize mastery when they see it. The disgusting thing that was done to you, it became your PhD in human nature, your master's in manipulation detection, your certification in shadow work. You didn't go to therapy, you went through therapy. The kind that burns you down to atoms and rebuilds you as something unprecedented. And here's what's really messing with their heads. You're not bitter. You're not walking around bleeding everywhere. You're not trauma dumping or playing victim. You're moving through the world like someone who solved an impossible equation. Like someone who cracked the code they thought was unbreakable. What they did to you required planning, coordination, and a complete abandonment of human decency. It was surgical in its cruelty, precise in its devastation. They didn't just hurt you, they tried to mathematically destroy your capacity to trust, love, and function. But that surgical precision taught you something valuable. It taught you that destruction can be an art form, that power can be wielded with exactitude, that energy can be directed with laser focus. They showed you the dark side of precision, and you flipped it. Now you move through the world with that same surgical precision, but in reverse, Where they used it to destroy, you use it to build. Where they used it to betray, you use it to discern. Where they used it to manipulate, you use it to illuminate truth. Watch how you handle situations now. Notice the precision, the way you can dismantle someone's entire argument with 3 words. The way you can expose deception with a single question. The way you can redirect energy with minimal effort. That's not natural talent. That's learned precision. This is why they're studying you so intensely. Because you're demonstrating a level of mastery they didn't know was possible. You're not just surviving what they did. You're using their own methodology against them, but elevated, transformed, purified into something they can't defend against. You know what really disturbs them? Your calm. That eerie stillness you've developed. The way you can sit in chaos without flinching. The way you can hear about betrayal without your heart rate changing. The way you can face degradation with a slight smile. They expected rage. They prepared for your anger. They had contingency plans for your revenge. But this calm mastery, this peaceful power, they have no defense against it. Because you can't fight someone who's not fighting. You can't defeat someone who's already won. That disgusting thing they did was supposed to make you reactive. It was designed to keep you triggered forever. They wanted you jumping at shadows, flinching at memories, bleeding from wounds that wouldn't heal. They needed you dysregulated to maintain their power. Instead, you did the unthinkable. You integrated it. You digested their poison completely. You processed it so thoroughly that it became part of your power source. Now you run on a different frequency entirely, a frequency they can't access or affect. This is what they're desperately trying to understand. How do you fight someone who transformed your worst attack into their greatest strength? How do you destabilize someone who found stability in chaos? How do you break someone who reassembled themselves from atoms? Let's give credit where it's due. They gave you an education worth millions. They taught you things about human nature that most people die without learning. They showed you the depths of depravity that exist behind pleasant masks. That disgusting act? It was your initiation into advanced human psychology. They showed you how predators think, how betrayers justify, how the corrupt operate. They gave you a front row seat to the theater of human darkness. And you took notes. Oh, did you take notes? Not with pen and paper, but with your cells, with your nervous system, with every fiber of your being. You became a living library of survival wisdom, a walking encyclopedia of human shadow. This is why you're so effective now. You're not guessing about people's motivations. You know. You've seen the playbook. You've studied the patterns. You've mapped the territory of human cruelty. And that map is now your superpower. They watch you navigate situations they couldn't handle and wonder how you do it. The answer is simple. They trained you. That disgusting thing they did, it was your boot camp, your trial by fire, your initiation into the advanced course they never meant to teach. Something fundamental changed in your energy signature after processing what they did. You started vibrating at a frequency that makes you essentially untouchable. Not untouchable in an arrogant way, untouchable in a been there, survived that, transcended it way. People feel it when they meet you now. That quality that makes manipulators nervous, that energy that makes fake people uncomfortable, that presence that makes the corrupt want to leave the room. You're like kryptonite to anyone operating from shadow. This is what your haters are trying to decode. They see you moving through spaces they can't enter, building things they can't destroy, creating from a place they can't access. You're operating from a dimension that requires a password they'll never have. The password is authentic transformation. They did something so disgusting that it shot you out of their reality entirely. You don't exist in the same psychological universe anymore. While they're still playing checkers with human emotions, you're playing multi-dimensional chess with consciousness itself. And the most beautiful part? You're not even trying to be untouchable. It's just what happens when you fully digest poison and transform it into medicine. You become immune, not just to what they did, but to the entire frequency from which such actions originate. Let me tell you exactly what they're writing down about you. Because yes, they're literally taking notes, creating documents, having discussions. Your transformation has become their obsession, their case study, their impossible equation to solve. Note 1, they don't react anymore. They've noticed you don't take the bait. You don't engage with provocations. You don't defend yourself against lies. You just exist in your truth and let reality sort itself out. This terrifies them, because reaction was their fuel. Note 2, they see through everything. They've realized you can spot their games before they even start playing. You detect their energy shifts. You catch their micro expressions. You hear what they're not saying, louder than what they are. They feel naked in your presence. Note 3, they turned it into power somehow. This is the one that breaks their brains. They can see you're literally powered by what should have destroyed you. You reference it without bleeding. You speak about it without shrinking. You've integrated it so completely, it's now part of your strength. Note 4, nothing works on them anymore. They've tried everything. Guilt doesn't work. Shame bounces off. Manipulation gets reversed. Gaslighting becomes impossible. You're like a mirror that shows them exactly what they're trying to do, and it's devastating to their ego. They're desperately trying to reverse engineer your transformation, having late-night conversations trying to figure out your secret. How did they do it? What's the formula? Can we replicate it? But here's what they don't understand. You can't fake this kind of transformation. You can't shortcut through actual alchemy. They want your power without your pain. They want your wisdom without your wounds. They want your frequency without the fire that forged it. It doesn't work that way. What you achieved can't be replicated through strategy. It can't be copied through observation. It can only be earned through the complete digestion of devastation, through the full integration of disgust, through the absolute transformation of trauma into triumph. They're taking notes on your external behaviors while missing the internal revolution. They see you've changed, but can't grasp how completely you've rebuilt yourself from the cellular level up. They're trying to copy your moves without understanding you've become a different species entirely. This is why their attempts to replicate your energy fail so spectacularly. They're cosplaying transformation while you're living it. They're performing power while you're embodying it. They're pretending to be unfazed while you genuinely transformed. The phased into fuel. Let's talk about why they're calling your handling of this perfect. Because it's not what they expected. You didn't go nuclear. You didn't seek revenge. You didn't create drama. You did something far more devastating. You evolved beyond their reach. Your handling was perfect because it was alchemical. You took their lowest action and elevated it into your highest teaching. You transformed their cruelty into your curriculum. You turned their betrayal into your breakthrough.